filter. Let's see what it looks like about that time, but I'm having oil issues, so I'm leading to believe that it's a separator filter issue. But anyway, I got my king valves on both my high side, my medium temp compressors shut off. Got my hot gas dump valve shut off. Got my oil line from my separator to my reservoir shut off. We got my discharge line going to my condenser, my gas cooler shut off, and we're just leaving the rest of the out. We'll go ahead and get this filter changed out. All right, so we got both my bolts out. I'm breaking these free. I like to leave at least 2 bolts in there, just in case there's anything built up, which there's not. We got a broke free, so go ahead and take the rest of these bolts out, nuts off of here. Our filter in there. Go ahead and get those bolts off. Got pulled it out. Blown out filter, just like I suspected. That's why we're not separating any oil. So that's what we got. All right, now that we got the old filter out, there's a new filter back in. You got to make sure you get all that junk out of here. I had my bottom gasket was still in there. Top gasket, don't know where it is, and it's not in there. Sure it sits in there. Get it seated properly. Got that in there. Oh, well, there's my other gasket right there. I'm tripping. It's on this top seal. Other gasket off. Drop this back on there. By the way, this is Coalescing oil filter. It's on a CO2 rack. It works by your discharge gas comes through it, pushes it up through that filter, and your filter will it filters it, but it also the beads of oil collect on it and just drip down and then get pushed over to your reservoir. So let's see, I did have some brand new nuts somewhere. This right here is going to be my gasket for my flange. But we'll go ahead and get these nuts put on and we'll get it sealed back up. All right, your new gasket on there. My bolt's tight. Put this bolt back in there. That one fell out, but yeah, so should be good to go. Throw this flange back on there and get her buttoned up and pulled on a vacuum and get it started back up. All right, so you see the discharge negative 13. I'm pulling a vacuum right now. Not gonna be very long. We'll get this thing back up and running. I did it in right around an hour, so maybe a little bit less, probably a little bit less, but I'm just tightening everything back up, make sure all this is tight, and then I'm gonna go ahead and start back up. Alright, so just a little bit about how we got to that point where that oil filter was blown out like it was. It's a Transcritical rack. I've been servicing that store maybe for 4 or 5 months now. We got to my Q1 PM, but right before that PM, I had a after hour calls to the technician that went out there. He pulled they have a little micron strainer. They have two of them actually on that oil feed going to the compressors. You have one coming directly out the separator, and then that's going to the reservoir, and then you have another one that's in the line with the reservoir going to your oil header that goes to each of your compressors, and that one's right before the header. But he went and pulled that strainer, called me and told him, well, look at that filter and those strainers. And he looked at the strainer, pulled that one strainer coming out of the separator, it was clogged, changed it, started the rack back up. Everything ran fine for a couple of days. And then while I was doing my PM, or maybe it was right before I started my PM over there, they had my rack go off on oil failure. And that's what it was. It was before I started my PM, because I rushed over there because I knew the rack was down and both my compressors were off on oil failure. I couldn't get any oil. Both my medium temp compressors, I couldn't get any oil to my medium temp compressors. They didn't have any in the reservoir, didn't have any in the separator. They had a whole bunch of my low temp. So what I ended up doing is I didn't go and pull my filter just yet because I didn't have a gasket, nor did I have a filter. I would have had to order it. So I went ahead and ordered it that day. But I did pull my other screen going to my header, the little 90 micron inline filter going to my header, and that was plugged up too. Not as bad as that one that was changed out previously coming from the separator. And it was a headache getting that rack started back up because I had to lower my pressure on both my medium temp and my low temp compressors so I could pump oil from my low temp to my medium temp, just to get my medium temp to start running again, to try and get some oil pulled back into that reservoir, which I was able to. Got it back up and running. I went and grabbed a few gallons of oil from some of my other sites. I had lost a little bit of oil, so I put around a quart back in there, and it held me over until I was able to get that filter out there. Got the filter out there, and I knew it was blown out. Couldn't really tell per se. I didn't gauge up across my filter. I was told that it was changed out around a year ago, which meant that it was time to be changed out again. But I didn't know how accurate that information was. But when I pulled it, yep, it was blown out. And one thing you can miss with those oil filters, and please correct me if I'm wrong, or if you actually know the exact numbers, but I look for, there's always going to be a pressure differential across that oil filter right after you change it out, because it creates a pressure drop. So 2 to 5, really 2 to 8, normal. Once you start getting above 8 to 10, and then to 15, you need to change that thing out, because eventually it'll blow out like it did. And when it blows out, well, now you don't have any pressure drop across it. And some people will overlook that and be like, oh, well, I don't have a pressure drop, so, my filter should be good. Well, in that coalescent oil filter, if you don't have a pressure drop, you have an issue, and you probably have a blown out filter. So that's one thing to look at. And it didn't take long to get to that point where we figured out it was that blown out filter. It was just, a process. And thanks to United Refrigeration, they can always have my filters on site or in their warehouse. They always have them in their warehouse, so I can always have it at their shop within, a day or two. I think it only took a day to get that filter out there, and I actually got 2 filters. I'm gonna change one at one of the other stores Then I have another one on order for my third store that's in the area. And I'm just going to start changing them out on my Q1 PMs, my first quarter PMs, because like I said, I've only been servicing those stores for probably around 5 months, so I don't really know the history of them. You know, the racks aren't all that old, and the oldest one is maybe 4 years old. Could be 5. It was either 20 or 21. The oldest rack was installed. But it's always important to, you know, to look at all that stuff on your PMs. You know, and after I changed that filter out, you know, now it got me thinking I need to go ahead and probably my next quarter PM, we'll go ahead and change both those suction filters out. I have a bunch of new Micron filters ordered for the inline filters ordered for all the other stores. And yeah, I mean, it's so important to keep up your maintenance on these racks, because if you don't, it's just a bunch of cleanup work, and then it's one thing after another, you know, and you'll be out there over and over and over again, you know, dealing with little knick-knack stuff after hours and on the weekends, you know, and their rack will go down and they get in a frenzy because they have to move food to their walk-ins and they don't want their food to go bad, and then they're stressing and you're stressing because you're trying to get the rack back up, you know, at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, while they still got a bunch of people in the store shopping, and they have to close all the curtains to the multi-decks. It's just a headache. So I mean, it's better to do your maintenance and, you know, be you know, just do your due diligence when you're doing this preventive maintenance, to take care of the customer and the rack the best way that you can. It's sometimes it's a long process depending on how neglected the stores have been. These stores have not been all that neglected, but I can say this is a lot of stuff that I need to clean up. I'm about to change out all their coil out sensors on their MDUs. They're using the concave brass Hill Phoenix sensors, which strangely enough, when they get cold, you know, they start to have a very big swing on there. I've had some reading 150 degrees. I go and change it out, then I ohm it out once it's at room temperature, and it's reading, you know, 9 K ohms. You know, it's like right on point. But when it gets cold, it starts going all crazy. So I'm changing all those coil out sensors with CPCs that I know are a lot less prone to failing, you know. And because if I'm reading high coil out temperature, well, it's going to give me flood back to my rack, because my pulse valve is going to think that, or my case is going to think that my superheat's higher than it actually is, and then it's going to flood my evaporator, and eventually flood back to my rack, causing issues. But y'all enjoy the video, like, subscribe, be safe out there, and comment in my section, and let me know what your thoughts are about preventive maintenance on racks, and not just racks, but preventive maintenance in general. It's important, you know, and it's one of the more overlooked parts of our trade, and neglected parts of our trade, but it's probably one of the most important in my eyes. So y'all be safe out there. Take it easy. Have a good weekend.